very well-known story in many linguistic and theologist circles is the story of the Tower of Babel in the biblical book of Genesis. As the story goes, the entire population of humanity was once located in a single spot and spoke a single language. Eventually, they decided to build a colossal tower meant to stand so tall that humans could use it to climb up to heaven and meet God. But God saw their efforts and confounded their single language into many. Unable to understand each other, they couldn't cooperate well enough to finish the tower, and so they all split off into different nations. Now, this story was probably only originally meant as a mythological explanation of why there's different languages, but the debate over the identity of the single human language from the beginning has been ongoing for centuries now. People from many different nations have claimed that their language was the one that humans all originally spoke, although ancient Hebrew is probably the most prevalent one. However, I believe that this language was actually a language that nobody today speaks, except for me. The reasoning for this is sound. The language, known only as Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee, has no good explanation for its existence other than divine intervention from an omnipotent otherworldly deity. To be honest, no mortal layman can ever really even grasp the sophistication of the sentence Ba-Ba-Ba-Beebe. Humanity is truly fortunate that an intellectual of my caliber is around to explain the complexity of this language, but of course I can't do that without explaining some history first. So let's start at the beginning. Speech is human vocal communication using language. Each language uses phonetic combinations of vowel and consonant sounds that form the sounds of its words. I think most people already know how to speak, so I'm gonna skip this explanation. Moving on, all natural languages that exist have a varying degree of irregularities, as well as other stupid random bullshit that make them less than ideal when other people are trying to learn them. That's where international auxiliary languages come in. The idea is, instead of spending 10 billion trillion thousand hours learning English or some other prominent language, we could get somebody to design a language for everybody to learn that doesn't have 3 letters that make the same sound. Anyway, there's been many thousands of attempts at creating a language for this purpose, but chances are if you've heard of any of them, you've heard of Esperanto, the only constructed language cool enough to be on Google Translate, and it even has its own Duolingo course. Esperanto was created back in 1887 by a Polish ophthalmologist named Ludwig Zamenhof, and since then it's gained many hundreds of thousands of speakers worldwide. But there is a problem with Esperanto, and that's that it's not actually very good. See, back in 1887 when it was created, the only other prominent IAL of the time was Volapük, which meant that not having 8 vowels was an improvement. That's how low the bar was. So, to measure how learnable an IAL is to speakers of a diverse group of linguistic backgrounds, we have to consider phonological compatibility first. So let's say you have trouble pronouncing a trilled R. If this was the case, you wouldn't want to learn a language with a trilled R in it if you can avoid it. But the thing is, there's many other sounds that can be troublesome like this for speakers of various other languages. Unfortunately, Esperanto has some of these sounds, and due to that, it's not compatible with French, or Arabic, or any one of these! Oh boy, I sure hope there's no monolingual speakers of any one of these languages that wants to learn Esperanto. Oh, but wait! What's this? Unless you can pronounce the consonant at the end of Bach, Lach, Van Gogh, I assume there's other words that don't rhyme with och. Esperanto isn't even compatible with English! But that's not even all, because aside from the phonology, Esperanto also has phonotactics we need to consider. Well, actually it doesn't, but we'll get to that. See, most natural languages have restrictions on where sounds can be placed in a word. For example, English has all of these sounds independently, but you never see a word spelled because it's phonotactically illegal. Esperanto just sort of looks at this whole concept and says, nah, not for me. You can put sounds anywhere you damn well please in the word, and so you get words like pneuo, satsii, and exclavo. The problem is that any new speakers wanting to learn an IAL are gonna learn the one that has the most speakers already, so it just gains more speakers by doing that, and it's a cycle. But Esperanto still has the most speakers, and at the end of the day, popularity is really the most important factor in an IAL. Although, learnability is up there too, and Esperanto isn't really good at that either. You see, Esperanto's word count stretches far into the thousands, and it's full of all of these mathematical and scientific terms that nobody's really gonna actually seriously be using. It kind of seems like Esperanto is trying so hard to replace natural languages that it is one now. The fact of the matter is, learnability is one of the most important factors for an IAL, and Esperanto just doesn't fulfill it. So, are there any IALs that do beat Esperanto in that? I mean, yeah, there's probably like 400. It's just that most of them are actual utter complete garbage. Anyway, if we're going to be looking for a language that prioritizes learnability, we're going to be looking for one that has as few words and as little grammar as possible. Although it is true that the more simple a language is, the less complicated concepts it can convey, most of the time when you're talking about the stock market and peptide bonds or shit like that, you're just going to be using a natural language anyway. So by this logic, we should be looking for a language that's as simple to learn and as simple to use as possible. Toki Pona was not actually created as an IAL, but it is built around the design philosophy of minimalism, and that inadvertently makes it one of the most easy to learn languages that there is. The entire language contains no more than 123 words, and each one of those words has a very simple meaning, like good, small, Toki Pona Logical Lang, or food. If you want to express something that's outside of the 123 word limit, you have to make compound words out of adjectives, and use metaphors and context clues. To use proper nouns, you have to put them in as adjectives that describe another noun. It's also encouraged that you employ tokiponization, which is when you change a word to fit the phonology and phonotactics of the language. So for example, Canada becomes Ma Canada, or if your name is Alfonso Thumbelina, you'd become Jan Alfonso Tampelena. As you can see, it has a very simplistic set of sounds. Only 9 consonants and 5 vowels total, and every syllable has to fit strictly consonant, vowel, nasal. Nasal means N. This makes it compatible with the vast majority of natural languages, except for Arabic and Mandarin Chinese for some reason, even though those are some of those important languages there are. I don't know. It's still compatible enough, though. All in all, for ease of learning, Toki Pona is where it's at. However, Toki Pona is still trying to replicate and be capable of expressing everything a natural language can, but at the same time, it still has less words than there are original Pokemon, which puts it in sort of a jack-of-all-trades and master-of-none situation. For example, it has 5 words for color, but there's no way to distinguish blue from green. There is a number system, but there's no numbers larger than 2. This means that if you need to say, I would like 24 apples, the direct translation is Miwile ekililoye 222 222 2222. 2. There's even words for onomatopoeia. Look, Toki Pona still succeeds at what it's trying to do, which is to be fun and cute, not some international, global whatever. But I figure if there was an IAL that still had a very simple word count and such like that, it could work well as a sort of simple supplementary language that is best suited for things like ordering food, asking for directions, stuff like that, and isn't even capable of expressing more complicated stuff. Lokasi is what I just described. It's an IAL with a very small word count, and as it turns out, it's also the Malay word for location, apparently. I guess. But what's really notable about this one is that it has no speakers, because I made it about 2 weeks ago. Lokasi has less than 60 words, and a little bit of grammar. It has a tiny phonology, but phonotactically it's a little bit more loose. You can have multiple consecutive vowels, and both n and s can go at the end of a syllable. Mainly that just makes it more inconvenient for speakers of the Chineses, but they can manage. This language is compatible with Mandarin Chinese and Arabic this time, as well as a great deal of other languages. But yet, it could be more compatible. There's only 3 vowels, which is essentially as compatible as it can get. I did choose O instead of U, which is a little bit weird, but it makes more sense for Swedish speakers and Japanese and some other languages. But also, since the letter V is in the language, it makes them more discernible when writing. Nevertheless, there's some weird stuff going on in Korean between ul and n in certain positions in a word, so if we want this to be perfectly compatible, we're gonna have to get rid of n. Although also in some varieties of English, t is tapped in between vowels, which is gonna be confusing to Japanese speakers because they also approximate ul as a tap, so we have to get rid of ul as well. Hawaiian speakers actually don't differentiate between t and k, so k needs to go. Japanese speakers turn the sequence t into chi, which is definitely too similar to chi, so t has to go. Some languages actually don't have a ch sound when compared to s, so ch isn't compatible enough. Speakers of Rotokas actually won't be able to differentiate from v, so isn't compatible either. We need to get rid of that also. Speakers of Paraha actually don't have a good approximation for s or v, so we actually need to get rid of both of those as well. And that leaves us with the perfect phonetic inventory. Only one sound, only one single consonant. This is absolute perfection that I'm looking at right here. Everybody on the face of the earth can speak this language. Except for speakers of Tlingit, Chippewayan, Oneida, Wichita, Abkhaz, Adgay, Kabardian, Ubik, and all mute people. Anyway, Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee has 4 sounds. B, A, E, and U. These can combine to make 3 syllables. Ba, B, and I forgot the other one, sorry. This makes the language incredibly useful, as well as extremely adaptable. Morse code? Who needs it? Binary? Child's play. Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee easily beats both. And when it comes to writing systems, you could adapt it to basically anyone you can think of. Latin, Cyrillic, Arabic, Greek, any one of the Foodorks, Hiragana, Cherokee, Matoran, you name it. In addition to all those, though, Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee also has its own original writing system. For this writing system, the ghost emoji represents boo, the goat emoji represents ba, and the bee emoji represents come on, you can figure it out. It's obviously space, and the bee blood type emoji represents bee, but where Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee really shines is its vocabulary. You see, where languages like toki pona only have words for very simple concepts and express more complicated ones by combining them, Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee starts with the complicated concepts and builds down by combining them. For example, there is no single word for food, but you can just say Ba-Bee-Bah-Bah-Boo-Boo, which means the cozy scent of some delicious fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies, ba, war rations. And what else could that mean but food? The word ba here is the compound word marker, which notes that you shouldn't actually take these 2 words literally, you just sort of have to guess what they have in common. You can connect as many words together with ba as you need to perfectly and specifically express your exact meaning. And this really has revolutionary implications for things like poetry. Every bit of nuance and connotation that you can imagine is at your fingertips here. If you need to say person, you'll usually be saying Babu-Bah-Bah-Bah, which is blacksmith plus my dad. But if you need to express that somebody's cruel or uncaring, you could replace one of those with an unmerciful and uncaring god. Or you could replace one of those with Denmark, to express that somebody has something to do with Denmark. So you've got a lot of choices on that front. Now when it comes to grammar, I wanted to have a very simple system, and I eventually realized that the most simple system possible that I could have is to just not have grammar. So I don't. There's no grammar at all. Now there is the aforementioned compound marker, as well as the subject marker and the dry erase marker, but those don't actually count as grammar, because, I said so. Moving forward, there's 2 pronoun words. Baba is you, and Baba-Baba is the first person accused of plural informal inclusive bilingual exclusive agricultural pronoun. There are no third-person pronouns. The numbering system of Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee is a little bit complicated. Now the obvious choice would be to have a word for 1, 2, and many, but I just don't have enough room for that. I can't use that many words up on just numbers, so I decided to compromise by having a word for 1.5 and a word for 2.5. The only other dedicated number word is 170 octillion, 141 dectillion, 183 nonillion, 460 octillion, 467 septillion, 231 hextillion, 731 quintillion, 687 quadrillion, 303 trillion, 715 billion, 884 million, 105,727. So, if you've got that many of something, you're in luck. Anyway, Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee also has a preposition system, with words for upon, amongst, and betwixt, as well as a color system, with words for light black, greenish magenta, and the color of your beautiful eyes, of course, my darling. Moving on, proper nouns have to be loaned from outside the language, but similar to tokiponization, it's also recommended that you boobyize all words to fit the boobie and ba syllables. However, since there's already words in the language that go up to 5 syllables, boobieization also means that a word has to be 6 syllables or more. So if your name is Bobby, your boobieyized name can't just be Bobby, because Bobby is already a word that means the cozy scent of some delicious fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies. So your name is now Ba-Ba-Ba-Ba-Bee. It makes sense, right? Now, I haven't been able to find a language that is as good at translating concepts as Beeboo-Bah-Boobah, but it is common practice to put new languages through some tests to see if they're up to the task of translating complex or long-form concepts. The most common ones of these are probably My Hovercraft is Full of Eels and The North Wind of the Sun story, both of which I'm proud to report Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee passes with flying colors. In conclusion, I'm sure we can all agree that Beeboo-Bah-Boobah Boobee is the pinnacle of human language. It's optimally universal, usable with any writing system, and most importantly can express complicated concepts like quantum entanglement, dir-CMD environment variables, or thumb. Of course, if you disagree with me, if you think this language isn't good at all, that's fine, too. Really, it's understandable. All I would ask in that scenario is that you rewind this video to the beginning and watch the entire thing again, because you obviously weren't listening.